Hey, so Silph Arena have just announced their new meta for the next cycle of factions, and it is the Comet Cup. I'm Fish on a Hitter, and I will be breaking down just the bare basics of the meta, just so you can start to get a handle on it and work out what you need to do to build a team. So the meta is 5 types: Fire, Flying, Psychic, Ice, and Normal, and the individual bands are Altaria, Defense Deoxys, Medicham, Wobbuffet, Chansey, and Mantine. I remembered it all off the top of my head. You should be proud of me. So there are different roles that you want to fill with your team building, and the first one you can see it up the top here is your pseudo fighters in Vigoroth and Obstagoon. We've seen it before. Vigoroth has such safe matchups against so much of the meta. Even a lot of the things that you would bring to counter it can lose to it. Obstagoon is an interesting one because it can beat a lot of those things that you would bring to counter a Vigoroth, like a Ghost, like a Psychic. So you've got to be wary that you're basically planning for your opponent to bring either or maybe even both of those. Now, probably the easiest way to counter those fighters is with the flying types. Mandibar's not so much because it actually loses to Obstagoon, Zapdos, Skarmory, Talonflame. Talonflame and Aerodactyl have their own problems, which we'll talk about later. Pelipper is one that I'm really looking at. Pelipper counters those pseudo fighters, but also has that fast weather ball, which will come in real handy against one of the other typings that we'll talk about in a minute. Next, let's go to the electrics, where Alolan Raichu, I think I've mentioned it already, you might not have. Alolan Raichu is going to be pretty popular, I feel. It beats Vigoroth, although, you know, it has lose conditions there. It has a lot of general safe matchups with the all-electric moveset, Volt Switch, Thunder Punch, and Wild Charge. I don't see any reason to bring Psychic or Grass Knot in this meta. Zapdos is an option that does beat both fighters, but is also taking a little more super effective damage from Rock Throwers and Ices. Emolga, very similar to Zapdos, it's just a little bit spammier, where it's got Discharge instead of Thunderbolt, but doesn't quite hit as hard. So then, let's talk about the Rock Throwers. And Makago is number 1. Makago, relatively bulky. It will be losing to the pseudo fighters, but it can beat Charmers, it can beat Ices. It does take super effective damage from the Weather Ball that we mentioned before. So, like, it can beat Flyers quite easily, but Pelipper can hit back very, very hard. Lunatone and Solrock do have play. The advantage is that they're not taking super effective damage from the counters, but they are taking super effective damage from Night Slash from Obstagoon. So if you do run it, be wary of that. I wouldn't worry about Aerodactyl at all, because this is already a fairly glassy meta, and Aerodactyl, as well as being glassy, also takes super effective damage from your Ices, your Rocks, your Waters, your Electrics, and it's also not resisting counter, which you want your Flyer to do. So I'm not sold on Aerodactyl. Somebody prove me wrong. Ice is the next one. And just to list you through a few options: Dugong, Alolan Ninetales, Lapras. They're probably the big 3 I'm looking at. You can totally run a Celio or Alolan Sandslash, as long as with Sandslash you're avoiding the counter users. Lapras has that same advantage as Pelipper, where it's got the Surf that can pressure your Rock Throwers and generally a lot of things. Finally, we'll take a look at some general options. Diggersby has play against pretty much anything except a Flyer. Ninetales is going to have a lot of good general safe matchups. I would definitely consider a Ninetales. We've got Mandibuzz, even though it's in the Flyer category, I would probably class it more as a generalist. Snorlax, Wigglytuff as a good generalist. Mew with that Surf Wild Charge, you're getting the Water and the Electric. And Blaziken is a counter user that beats both other counter users, which is very interesting. Finally, Malamar, Foul Play, Superpower, going to be quite good coverage. And that's it. That's the basics of the meta. I hope this helps. Good luck, and we'll see you in the next video.